Grand Rising, y'all. Hope everyone's doing well.
Grand Rising, everyone. Peace, peace, peace. Glad to be back with the relatives this rising.
Most definitely, most definitely. Go ahead and greet everybody that's in the chat. Grand Rising, Lady LJ Free. Grand Rising, Enrique. Grand Rising, Macadam One. Grand Rising, You Don't Want It. And anyone else who's out there that we have yet to speak with. Hopefully, everyone had a productive day yesterday. And hopefully, everything is getting started off to a productive day this rising. So, hopefully, everyone's ready to have their minds expanded today as we continue to move forward with the Cherokee American Wars and all the quote unquote conflicts that came with it. So, how was your day yesterday, Bones?
Pretty good, pretty good. A whole lot of business planning actually got put down on paper, so
That's what's up. So, I had a very interesting day yesterday. Um, I ended up meeting with a lot of politicians. I was invited to a meeting that I didn't know was basically a campaign event for one of the individuals running for office in Prince William County. Uh, Shout out to Andrea Bailey and her husband, Cozy Bailey. She's running for Prince William County Board of Supervisors. And she actually had Senator Tim Kaine there. So I got to meet him. And I also got to meet Mayor Derek Woods of Dumfries. And also the district supervisor, Mr. Victor Angry. And it was very interesting. It's one of the first times I've actually, what's the best way to put it? Requested to be involved in the county like that. And we let them know a little bit about what we were doing here on the American Indian front. So we'll be meeting with some of them over the next couple of weeks. So
that's what's up.
yeah.
Yeah, work done.
It was definitely eye-opening, to say the least. Gave me a different perspective and a different view of how politics works, how these offices actually run, and some of the things that causes people to go into office. So basically, hour and a half event ended up turning into an additional 3-hour meeting. So yeah, I look forward to being able to share as I get the opportunity to talk to these individuals and see how we can help them and see how we can help our county and eventually everybody else's county as well. So stay tuned.
And again, that goes back to being active in your community. That there's a lot of these functions that's going on in our communities. We just have to take the time to be active about it.
Exactly. Grand Rising, LaDarian Woods. Hopefully you're doing well this rising. So it's definitely going to be interesting to say the least. So hopefully everyone's got their hard hats ready, their pickaxes, the backhoes, the front loaders, the dynamite. Because yesterday was interesting, but I got a feeling today is going to get even more so. We're going to discover some more things. We're going to touch a little bit on the Treaty of Paris again, and then we're going to go from there. Grand Rising, don't sell out. Hopefully you had a good day yesterday.
Grand Rising, everybody. Peace, peace. Peace.
Also, too, everybody give us some ones in the chat to make sure that y'all can hear everyone clearly and that no one's coming in too low or possibly too loud.
Mic check. Mic check. Mic check.
So give us some ones if y'all can hear. No sellout, fine. Give us some ones if you can hear Bones and myself. But let us know if you're not hearing them too well. Bones hasn't said anything yet in the last 3 minutes, so.
I had to answer a call real quick. I'm back.
Okay.
Mic check. 1 2 1 2. I guess they'd be like, he back on his feet. Let's get him.
Grand Rising, Pamela Hall. Glad you were able to join us this rising, as always. Alright. So before we get started, you know what we got to do? We got to let everyone know who we are and what we're about. The Cab Grand Rising Show consists of a Conscious Assembly, which is a nonprofit organization. The voices that you normally hear in the morning are part of that nonprofit. Myself, TMH, or Thomas Harrelson. We have Bones H. McCoy, and then there's No Sellout. And then from time to time, you're going to hear from what we call our resident Indian expert, Doodle Vision, Choctaw Jimmy, aka James Flint. And then there are a lot of individuals also in the background helping this Conscious Assembly movement not only help the counties that we live in, the states that we live in, but also help you guys. So, who is a Conscious Assembly? What do we do? The Conscious Assembly is the gathering of the minds that do the work. And our mission as the Conscious Assembly is, like I said, a nonprofit organization dedicated to raising up Indigenous American voices by using genealogy, also known as family history, which is the study of families and the tracing of their lineage and history. Genealogists use oral interviews, historical records, and genetic analysis and other records to obtain information about family to demonstrate kinship and pedigrees of its members. We do not deal with DNA. We also have core values, and our core values are the foundation of our company, which is essential to our success and serves as a lens through which we evaluate every business decision. Those core values are, but are not limited to, integrity, which is know and do what is right. Respect, treating others the way we want to be treated. Responsibility, embracing opportunities to contribute. And servant leadership, serve the community for the common good. We're not here to tell you who you are. We're not here to tell you who you're not. We're just here to help you with your genealogy, help you get tied into your tribe if that is your wish, whichever tribe that may be, whether it's American Indian, Native American, Hindu, African, or whatever. If your goal is to help your community and help your tribe to become self-sufficient, we will do that as well. That's our only mission. So, no sellout. Is there anything I missed or anything you want to add to that?
Nope.
Bones, did I miss anything?
Covered it all.
Okay, I'm getting better. Getting better. That's
Nail on the head. Nail on the head.
Alright, so let's get ready to put these hard hats on and get to work. Do you have the link and know where we at? No sellout?
You know I'll find it.
Dun dun dun.
Ah. It's in both back chats. I just put the link in the chat, so it should be easy to find. So, do you want to read it or you want me to start off?
Tax client.
Oh yeah, hold on 1 second.
Well, while you're doing that, I will go ahead and read the Treaty of Paris paragraph. If you're on a computer, laptop, tablet device, where the screen is relatively a good size, it's going to be pretty much halfway down the page. Reading this, the Treaty of Paris. We covered that extensively yesterday, but just wanted to give a brief overview. I put the link in the chat. As you know, we put the link in the chat for you to, one, be able to go back to it later. Number two, follow along if you're able. Number three, if there's anything that we miss, need to go more in depth with, or there's something that's inaccurate because of the tribe that you're affiliated with, or you know somebody that's affiliated with that tribe and they can verify with documentation and correct it, please do so. Because we're here to expose this information, not to tell you what to think, or what your view should be. And with that being said, also, the sources for everything that's in Wikipedia should always be at the bottom. If at any particular point they're not, please let us know. So with that being said, let's get started. Treaty of Paris, 1783. It was signed between Great Britain and the United States on September 3rd, 1783. The Treaty of Paris formally ended the American Revolution. The U.S. had already unilaterally declared hostilities over this previous April. Brown had already received orders from London in June to cease and desist. Following the treaty, Dragon Canoe turned to the Spanish, who still claimed all the territory south of the Cumberland and were now working against the Americans. And he turned to them for support, traded primarily through Pensacola and Mobile. Dragon Canoe also maintained relationships with British governor at Detroit, Alexander McKee. Through regular diplomatic missions, they are under his brother Little Owl and the Badger. And we also took a detour to find out actually who Little Owl was. With the end of the Revolutionary War, new settlers began flooding in the over mountain settlements. The reaction from the Cherokee was predictable, only it did not come from the towns on the lower Little Tennessee. Instead, warriors from the middle towns east of the mountains on the upper Little Tennessee began retaliation against the settlements on the west side, targeting the newer ones on the Pigeon and French Board rivers. In late 1783, Major Peter Fine raised a small militia and crossed the mountains to the east side and burned down the town of Cowie. So as we left off yesterday, what we discovered, or what appeared to have happened based off of the information that was provided to us, not only from this written statement or from Wikipedia, but from talking to our resident Indian, is that what it boils down to is that the United States government, France, Spain, and Great Britain had a nasty, notorious bad habit of bringing in immigrants during the time of relative peace, allowing those immigrants to encroach on Indian land, causing a war to break out, thus forcing the Indians to cede even more land, then rinsing and repeating the whole process. That's where we pretty much left off yesterday. Okay. So let's move on to the next paragraph, where we talks about treaties with the Chickasaw and the Muskogee. The Chickasaw signed the Treaty of French Lick with the new United States of America on November 6, 1783. So this treaty was signed literally a month and 2 months and 3 days after the Treaty of Paris was signed. And the Chickasaw never again took up arms against it. The Lower Cherokee were also present at the conference and apparently made some sort of agreement to cease their attacks on the Cumberland, for after this, American settlements in the area began to grow again. Also in November 1783, pro-American camp of the Lower Muskogee Nation signed the Treaty of Augusta with Georgia, ceding their claims to the territory in northern Georgia, known as the Oconee Country. After the tribe who lived there, the enraged McGillivray, who wanted to keep fighting, he burned the houses of the leaders responsible and sent the warriors to raid Georgia settlements. So there's another split already. So after all these treaties were signed, the Cherokee ceded more land. The Chickasaw never took up arms again against the American settlements. And then McGillivray burned down the houses of the leaders responsible and sent warriors to raid the settlements. So we're starting up all over again, right after the Treaty of Paris and what was the other treaty? Give me a second. The Treaty of French Lick. Now this treaty is not highlighted, but I wonder, what was the Treaty of French Lick? Let's go look. The Treaty of French Lick. See what we find. Well, that link was terminated. Let's see. So it gives a brief synopsis. So I'll put the link in here. LJ Free says, trick or treaty, here we come. That was funny. So you have to scroll down a little bit to the article that gives you the preview. So it gives you can view page 483 of pages 483 to 496. So you'll be able to go back and look at this at your leisure, but I just want to read a little bit of it to give us a concept and proper perspective of what's going on at this time. Grand Rising, Oak Cliff Tiff. We're just about to go over the treaty. Well, they call this a Chickasaw Treaty, but it's a French Lick Treaty. All right. It says the Virginia Chickasaw Treaty of 1783 deserves to rank as one of the major curiosities of American history. Now that's a good way to start it, right? One of the major curiosities of American history. It was made in North Carolina by the governor of Virginia with a tribe of Indians living in the present state of Mississippi. Wait a minute. It was made in North Carolina by the governor of Virginia with a tribe of Indians living in the present state of Mississippi. That already sounds kind of crazy. It brought to an official close a war that no longer existed and initiated a peace that was already 2 years old.
It's kind of triangle offense. What is this?
Made after 15 months of arduous effort, the record of the proceedings was promptly lost, and historians have been able to divine its contents only by the application of pure reason, that is, by speculation. The treaty is of no great importance in itself, but it is of considerable interest because the negotiations cut across practically every issue of Southern frontier history from 1778 to 1784. Involved in it are such diverse factors as the conquest of the Northwest by Virginia, Indian invasion of Kentucky from Canada, land speculation in North Carolina, Western land claims by Georgia, conflict of British and Spanish in the Southwest, and constitutional interpretation of the Articles of Confederation. I know, right? So for this treaty to be non-consequential, it covers a vast array of subjects and a vast array of topics for that particular time period. Again, it involved diverse factors as the conquest of the Northwest by Virginia, Indian invasion of Kentucky from Canada, land speculation in North Carolina, Western land claims by Georgia, conflict of British and Spain in the Southwest, and constitutional interpretation of the Articles of Confederation. It states the war, which the treaty officially closed, was caused by the erection of Fort Jefferson by Virginia on Chickasaw territory near the junction of the Ohio and Mississippi rivers. What? It says the war, which the treaty officially closed, was caused by the erection of Fort Jefferson by Virginia on Chickasaw territory near the junction of the Ohio and Mississippi River. This fort was projected in 1778 as an accessory of George Rogers Clark, Illinois' campaign. So basically, and I could be wrong, which wouldn't be the first nor the last time, but it looks like after the treaties and everything was signed, a fort was built on Chickasaw territory near where the Ohio and the Mississippi rivers converge, which would be a great trading point, or trading route, excuse me, or water route. That is very interesting. And this is coming from the Journal of Southern History, 1942, Southern Historical Association. So it only gave me the first page. So I'm going to see if I can quickly find the rest of this, because this is very interesting. That was the Treaty of French Lick. Yeah, and it doesn't give us any more information. Yes, it said the fort was an accessory. Come on, man. Is it me, or is it doesn't take much for us to get started and start falling into these deep cavernous holes that are created by these documents that are presented to us? I don't know. Maybe it's me. Give me about another 30 seconds so I can see if I can find something else on the French treaty, on the Treaty of French Lick. No luck. So if anyone can find any information on the Treaty of French Lick or the Chickasaw Treaty of 1783, please let us know, because that would be something we would definitely want to take a look at. So we're going to move back on with the Cherokee American Wars. and get to the post-revolution, the new directions, 1783 to 1788, and I will put the link in the chat. No sellout.
Nah.
Were you able to find it? Are you
Yes,
still?
but now I have to go back to the screen and find it. How did I know you were going to ask that? I should have done something. Okay, hold
on. Come on, man. You know that's how it works. It always works that way. Why would anything different happen?
Where are we at? We're at
post-revolution.
New Directions.
New Directions, exactly.
Yeah. Spanish Alliance.
Yep, that's it.
Got it. All right, I can't find it. No, I'm good. The Spanish. All right, everybody ready? Mic check. 2212.
Yeah, we can hear you.
All right. All right. The Spanish now held East Florida and West Florida, in addition to Louisiana, Tejas, Nuevo Mexico, and Nueva California. So that's Nuevo Mexico and Nueva California. Partly to hold the Americans at bay and partly to regain lost parts of La Florida. They armed and supplied the southern Indians both to curry favor and to encourage them to turn their weapons on the frontier settlements. Largely through the efforts of Alex McGillivray, the Spanish signed the Treaty of Pensacola for alliance and commerce with the Upper Muskogee, and the Lower Cherokee on May 30th, 1784. On June 22nd, 1784, the Treaty of Mobile was signed with the Choctaw and the Alabama. The Chickasaw, also at this conference, refused to sign because of their treaty with the Americans. With the signing of these two treaties, McDonald and Ross relocated to Turkeytown to consolidate their efforts and business with those of Campbell closer to their Spanish suppliers and to the British trading house of Pantone, Leslie and Company, and Pensacola. Sponsored by the Spanish.
Hold up.
Next time I'll pause longer.
That's okay. Look, I had to come off of mute.
I know. Yep.
Hit. Look, come off of mute. Hit the record, rewind, and then take pause.
Is it Monday? No, it ain't Monday.
No, it's Thursday.
All right, I'm just making sure.
So we're looking at the Treaty of Pensacola, the Treaty of Mobile, and the British trading house of Patton, Leslie and Company. So this is about the fourth time hearing about the Treaty of Pensacola. Let's see what's up with this Treaty of Pensacola, shall we? Just see what's going on. So the Treaty of Pensacola. So this is coming from Pensapedia. I guess it's Pennsylvania's version. No, of Wikipedia. So I'm gonna put this in the chat. So get them hard hats back on. And I'll go ahead and read it. Alright. It says the Treaty of Pensacola was a 1784 agreement between Spain and the Creek nations. It was negotiated by Alexander McGillivray with Spanish officials Arturo O'Neill and Martin Navarro of West Florida and Esteban Miro of Louisiana on May 31st and June 1st, 1784. Grand Rising Iron Flying Squirrel, if you click on the link right above your name, you'll see that we are looking at the Treaty of Pensacola. Articles of Agreement trade in Pensacola stipulated and granted by the Spanish nation with the Creek nations, and the Congress held with that view in the town of Pensacola, metropolis of West Florida, the 31st day of May and the 1st of June, 1784. Article 1. We, the above mentioned chiefs of the Creek Nation, in our names, and in the name of the other chiefs, captains, warriors, and other individuals of the nation, of whatever quality, sex, or condition they may be, swear by the Supreme Almighty God, creator of the heaven and the earth, to whom all things are subject, to keep and maintain an inviolable peace and fidelity with this most Catholic majesty, his provinces, subjects, and vassals. Then it goes on follows with four dots. Article 2. To correspond on the part of His Most Catholic Majesty to the confidence merited by the worthy and honorable chiefs of the Creek and other nations who are on the land conquered by the arms of His Majesty, we, the above mentioned Stephen Middle, Governor of the Province of Louisiana, Arthur O'Neill, Governor of Pensacola and the Province of West Florida, and Martin Novato, Intendant General of the same, offer in the name of the King to procure for the contracting nation a permanent and unilateral commerce, unless the inevitable event of a war should impede the exact accomplishments of this offer, at the most equitable prices, for which purpose tariffs shall be formed by the consent of both parties assembled in the present Congress, upon which the mutual treaty shall be established, and which ought to be inviolable, observed by the individuals of both the contracting parties with the utmost scrupulous exactness. What? They say all that to say that they're going to go into a commerce agreement unless there's a war and it gets repealed. And then there's also going to be tariffs agreed upon by all parties. That's the whole paragraph. Let's just say that. Anyway, Article 3. In order more and more to encourage the commerce and agriculture, the Creek nations will establish general peace with the Chickasaws, Choctaws, and other nations of the continent. Article 13, this reads, as the generous mind of His Most Catholic Majesty is far from exacting lands from the Indians, to form settlements to the prejudice of the proprietor, from henceforth, and from the perfect knowledge we have of paternal love He has for His beloved nation, we offer in His royal name to secure and guarantee to them those which they actually hold, according to the right by which they possess them, provided they are comprehended within the lines of the limits of His Majesty and our sovereign, and to prove, now different, His way of thinking is far from that of Britannic Majesty, and to render His royal clemency more affectionate. If ever by war or any other event they should be disposed of their lands by the enemies of His crown, we will grant them others, equivalent which may be vacant, where they may establish themselves without requiring any other recompense than in their continental fidelity. In the event that your land is taken by war from some other group, i.e. the British, we will provide you some other land in the event that we're not able to protect you. A whole paragraph just to say that. I understand now why the Indians didn't like talking to these people. Good grief. So that's pretty much what the Treaty of Pensacola stated. And it doesn't give you too much more. Well, I can't find much more. Beauty history, that doesn't give much. Oh, there is a printable version. So I'm sure you will be able to find more information on it, but that's pretty much the gist of it. Um, so I wanted to make sure we went over that for the purposes of context. And then there is a Treaty of Mobile. All right. Let's see what we find. Antonio said, I heard the first line saying heaven and earth and Catholic fathers. I'm asleep though. Yeah, a bunch of words, very wordy, unnecessary words to confuse. That's just my perspective. It's the same thing that lawyers do today. A lot of words. Treaty of Mobile. Yeah, I am flying squirrel. Lots of run-on sentences. I don't know how reliable this information is. So, let's see. Let me go back. 1784. Yeah, I'm still looking for the Treaty of Mobile of 1784. Mm-mm. I'm trying to figure out why this treaty is so hard to find. Interesting. Let's see. Only thing I see is like the Treaty of Fort Jackson happened in 1814, but doesn't make any mention of the treaty. Looks like we got some homework to do. The Treaty of Mobile. So, definitely gonna look that up. If anybody can find any information on the Treaty of Mobile that was signed approximately 1784, please let us know. And that treaty would have been signed with the Choctaw and the Alabama. And it probably can be found in the archives, so keep that in mind. So the next thing we want to look up before we move forward is, what is this Patton, Leslie and Company that was the British trading house that the British was running? So let's see. And why is it important? Grand Rising Elboria. Good to see you. We're taking a look at the Patton and Leslie Company in reference to the Cherokee Wars. So I just dropped the link in the chat so you can take a look at it now or later at your leisure. If you find anything that needs to be clarified, please let us know so we can learn together and grow together. So with that, I'm going to start reading. The Patton and Leslie Company was a company of Scottish merchants active in trading in the Bahamas and with the Native Americans of what is now the southern United States during the late 18th and early 19th centuries. Patton and Leslie, a company, was a partnership formed in 1783 at St. Augustine, capital of British East Florida, by William Patton and John Leslie Thomas Forbes. Why does that last name sound so familiar? Charles McLatchy and William Alexander for the purpose of trading with the Indians of Florida and adjacent territory claimed by Spain. So basically, what they were eventually the middlemen. The partners who were loyalists had been forced out of the United States during the American Revolutionary War with their property confiscated. Having established themselves in Florida and the Bahamas, the company was able to continue operating in Florida after the colonies returned to Spain in 1783 because there were no Spanish traders doing business with the region's Indians. Pat and Leslie and Company were granted a monopoly on this trade in East Florida and eventually also dominated the Indian trade in West Florida. Wait a minute. So, the Pat and Leslie and Company were kicked out of Florida during the Revolutionary War, and their property was confiscated, which means somebody took ownership of it. So, I don't know. Isn't there something called the spoils of war? And because they lost, shouldn't they have lost that company? And if they lost that company, why wasn't Spain in a position to put somebody to run the company so they can continue the trade? Unless that was something in the Treaty of Paris that prevented them from doing so. So it says, having established themselves in Florida and the Bahamas, the company was able to continue operating in Florida after the colonies returned to Spain in 1783 because there were no Spanish traders doing business with the region's Indians. But why not? Pat Leslie and Company were granted a monopoly of this trade in East Florida and eventually also dominated the Indian trade in West Florida. Now, with all of these wars going on and all of these European countries, well, not all three anyway, Great Britain, France, and Spain jockeying for trade, why is it that Spain has the only monopoly, which is redundant because monopoly means only, and not only West Florida, but East Florida as well? Something to think about. For many years, Pat Leslie and Company dominated trade with the Creeks and the Seminoles. They eventually captured much of the trade with the Choctaws and Chickasaws, and were important in the trade with the Cherokees. The partners harbored a great antipathy to the United States and used their influence with the Indians to advance Spanish territory claims against the U.S., as well as to encourage the Indians to resist white settlers and the United States' attempts to acquire land from the tribes. Pat Leslie and Company also operated as merchants in the Bahamas, organizing shipping of cotton and other local products and acting as agents for merchants in Britain. What? Hold up. Acting as agents for merchants in Britain. But I thought Spain helped France to help the United States to defeat Britain. I Am Flying Squirrel says spy. After the deaths of William Patton and John Leslie, the company was recognized in 1804 as John Forbes and Company. Yeah, I'm confused. I'm not acting. I'm confused for real. All this is confusing. Land ownership changing hands every 10 to 15 years. Double dealing, backdoor deals. This is annoying. So let's look at the Scots immigrants and the deerskin trade. So this is a little bit of history on the Pat and Leslie and Company. So it says John Gordon, a Scots immigrant from Aberdeenshire, established a vast trade network in the colonial South Carolina, Georgia, Florida during the 1760s. And this laid the foundation of Patton, Leslie and Company, which would become the largest mercantile company of the southern frontier. And Free, you're absolutely right. It says they're all relatives. Of course, they help each other. El Boria says, crazy how foreigners come here and kill each other over land that's not theirs, then tell us we're from across Atlantic. It's very interesting. After immigrating to the American colonies, William Patton and John Forbes, Thomas's younger brother, had done business with James Spalding, a trader who settled at St. Simon's Island, and his partner before 1776 through Gordon Charleston's firm. Patton served as Gordon's clerk from 1765 until 1772, when Gordon appointed him one of his attorneys. Forbes was Gordon's maternal nephew. Okay, Pamela Hall, I'm reading I'm reading about the Patton, Leslie and Company, and we're finding that they were allowed, even though they are a British company, they were allowed to maintain a monopoly in South and West Florida after they got their company confiscated during the American Revolutionary War. So that's where we at. Antonio says the question is always on whose behalf are the characters acting for? Back then, governments kneel to the religions. They were being manipulated like everyone else. That is something to take into consideration, Antonio. So, the firm's 5 founding partners, William Patton, Thomas Forbes, John Leslie, William Alexander, and Charles McLatchy, formed Patton, Leslie and Company at St. Augustine, the capital of the British East Florida, in late 1782 or early 1783. They were all Scotsmen who had traded with the colonists and Indians of South Carolina, Georgia, and East Florida before and during the American Revolution. It was a matter of survival for them to remain loyal to the Kingdom of Great Britain, as most of their trade goods, especially guns, lead, and gunpowder, came from the mother country, and rebelling against the British would have cut off their supplies. Between 1710 and 1714, stop. Wait a minute, let me go back. So, the Patton, Leslie and Company traded goods, especially guns, lead, and gunpowder, which was confiscated, according to this information, during the American Revolutionary War, and then given back. Okay. Some just don't sound right. Between 1710 and 1714, European cattle stocks had been devastated by the deadly bovine disease, causing Britain to prohibit the importation of cowhides. Sound like mad cow disease, don't it? From the continental Europe. As those supplies declined, the market for deerskin from the British North America and Spanish Florida had expanded rapidly. Buckskin was used in place of cowhide to manufacture saddles, leggings, shoes, gloves, harnesses, whips, breeches, and aprons by the middle of the 18th century. Yellow buckskin breeches, formerly the work garb of common labor, were worn by members of the social classes in England. The southern deerskin trade declined gradually after the American Revolutionary War, but the resourceful Scottish merchants found new opportunities for trade with the Indians even as they lost political and economic influence in the former British colonies of South Carolina and Georgia. Patton, Leslie and Company and his successor John Forbes and Company were actively involved in Indian affairs and had sway over international diplomacy in the region. All the original partners were from the northern Scotland. Patton, Leslie, and Forbes were born on the coast east of Inverness, overlooking the Moray Firth. The birthplace of McLatchy and Alexander are unknown. As staunch loyalists, the Scotsmen fled to St. Augustine during the war and were allowed to stay where Spain regained Florida by the terms of the Treaty of Paris of 1783. Okay, that makes sense. The Spanish crown found it useful to sanction Patentless and Company's trade with the Creeks and Seminoles and allowed the firm to sell them British guns, ammunition, rum, and various dry goods as a means of solidifying the Spaniards' alliance with these southern tribes. As always, they're in business, and they're doing business with each other at our expense. And there are some things that just don't mix when it comes to trade. Guns, ammunition, and rum. And I'll just leave it at that. As early as 1776, Patton had 32,000 deerskin stores in his main warehouse. Patton had 32,000 deerskins stored in his main warehouse. His other enterprises included naval stores, lumber, a rice and indigo plantation, and tracts of land. In the 1780s, he and his partners, Thomas Forbes, were granted thousands of acres of land west of present-day Palatka. Here, they used slave labor to build drainage canals and dikes for a rice plantation, as well as grow indigo and tap pine trees for naval stores such as turpentine, pitch, tar, and rosin. Quick question. Where did they get these slaves from? Because they don't say African slaves. They don't say Negro slaves. They said they used slave labor. And being that they had relationships with the Creeks, Seminoles, Muskogee, and who else? And Choctaw, it's safe to say that after the war, there were still captives. And according to some of the treaties, whoever you were captured that was a slave, you get to keep. Unless they were a soldier. Exactly.
You know what's so funny? Why in history that we forget that that's how it happened? That in all
You disappeared, Bones. Where you at, bro? Come back.
You said in history we
sides fought in a war that the losing side was always taking as slaves. And that goes back as far as man was fighting each other.
Mm-hmm.
People act like that's something hard to fathom. That has always been going on.
Mm-hmm.
Prisoners of war, you take them in and they work for you. Like I said again, if you got a population that you're ruling over, you're not finna dwindle your population because now you hurting yourself. Why would you take away from your own people that you ruling over? You're gonna take another group of people and have them do it.
And Free brings up a great point. She says they used slave laborers to build aqueducts, and yet it's a well-known fact that the Indians built the aqueducts and all infrastructure. So it couldn't have been African slaves. I'm just saying. Because at no particular time during any of these conversations are they talking about acquiring slaves. Where's the bill of sale for these slaves? When do you have time to fight a war, protect your property, and go buy slaves?
Not to mention ducking arrows from Indians.
Yeah, because you're always under attack. And depending on the way the wind blows and who was controlling the land at a particular time, you might get attacked by somebody that was once your friend. I'm just saying. But I'll wait for those receipts.
So I found some on that Treaty of French Lick. I put it in the cab hangout.
Oh, okay. So we're gonna. I bet it is interesting. It's interesting. Hold on, good people. We're gonna go back to the Treaty of French Lick. That just sounds notorious, don't it? The Treaty of French Lick.
Yeah, we all know what French Lick is now. Well, we will after you read it.
All right, hold on. Now you got me curious. Give me a second.
So that treaty helped them form a state.
Really?
French Lick is in Tennessee.
Interesting. I see it.
Said it's done.
Give me a second. I'll Put this in the chat. Alright, Treaty of Friesland. Let's get it. James Robinson, the leader of the expedition about to be described, and whom from henceforth will play an important part in the Cumberland settlement, is called by some historians the Father of Tennessee. With equal propriety, he may be called the father of Middle Tennessee. He was born in Brunswick County, Virginia. Hold on, let me expand this. He was born in Brunswick County, Virginia, June 28, 1742, and while yet a youth removed with his parents to Orange County, now Wake County, North Carolina in 1768. He married Miss Charlotte Reeves of the state. Having heard and answered the alluring call of the West, he journeyed in the spring of 1770 from North Carolina to the Holston River in East Tennessee. There he lent his aid to the Shelbys, Seavers, and others in founding Watauga, the first colony west of the mountains. For 9 years previous to his coming to the Cumberland, he had heroically braved the dangers of the wilderness and suffered innumerable privations because of the ravage of the hostile Indians. Really? Being exposed to the cruelties of the savage foes. Of him, Judge John Hayward, his contemporary and intimate friend, he said, like almost all those in America who have attained distinct, Robinson had boasted of neither noble lineage nor splendid ancestry, but he had what was far more valuable: a sound mind, a healthy body, robust frame, an intrepid soul, and an immodest desire for honest fame. Oh my gosh, they're killing me over here. In personal appearance, Robinson was tall, of fair complexion, light blue eyes, and dark hair. Though quiet and retiring in manner, he was by nature a leader of men and master of affairs. That pioneer Frenchman, Timothy de Morbrum, once said of Robinson, he always knows savoir faire, but to do, and he do him. Anyway. During the 35 years succeeding the foundation of the Cumberland settlement, he was a representative of the federal government in negotiation of every treaty made with the Indians of the South. Really? The latter held him in great veneration, always explaining his esteem by saying that he was winning ways and makes no fuss in dealing with the savages. Robinson was unquestionably the greatest diplomat the world had ever seen. But let us return to the immigrants. Late in October 1779, the Overland Party, about 200 strong, left Watauga. The route chosen was a difficult one, leading as it did by way of southern Kentucky, passing along the well-beaten trace through the mountains at Cumberland Gap. They traveled what was then known as Kentucky Trace to Whitley Station on Dix River, hence to Carpenter's Station on Green River, and hence to Roberts Fork on the north side of Green River. From there they journeyed down the river of Pittman Station, descending stream to Little Barren, which was crossed by Elk Lick. From hence they passed over to Big Barren and then up Drake's Creek to a noted bituminous spring, thence to a location in Simpson County called Maple Swamp. From the latter place, they crossed in Robertson County, Tennessee, and traveled along Red River to Cross Plains, going south by way of Good Lettersville and passing over Cumberland River at the bluff where Nashville now stands. This, the end of their journey, was reached the latter part of December, probably on Christmas Day 1779, and quite 2 months after their departure from Watauga. The weather during the months of November and December had been extremely severe, a large part of the journey having been made through snow. The party has suffered much from cold. This season has ever since been known through the eastern states as the hard winter. However, Robinson and all his followers arrived in safety, having traveled about 500 miles. No deaths had occurred, and they had been free from attacks by Indians. Oh, no savages mess with you, huh? So, Cumberland River was frozen and silent from bank to bank, and the entire party crossed over on the ice. When they were in the middle stream, the ice began to break with a cracking sound that might have been heard for many miles, and all the company were badly frightened lest they should be plunged into the river. It only settled a little, however, and finally landed them safe on the other side. Soon after leaving Watauga, Robinson and his companions, had been overtaken by the party from the New River under the leadership of John Rains. The latter had with them both horses and cattle, and were bound for Harrods Station, which was located at the present site of Harrodsburg, Mercer County, Kentucky. Robinson prevailed and then to change their plan and accompany him to French Lick Range. Had formerly visited both locations and discussing the matter with Robinson, declared that he felt like a man who wished to get married and knew two beautiful women, either of whom he could have and both whom he wanted. I wish they'd get to the point. During the same winter, Casper Mansker, Daniel Frazier, Amos Eden, and a number of other immigrants followed a route pursued by the first company, and after suffering great privations, reached the Cumberland country about the 1st of January. At the same time, we arrived from South Carolina, a party consisting of John and Alex Buchanan, Daniel and Sampson Williams, John and James Mulhern, Thomas Thompson, and others whose names are now unknown, all of whom come to cast their fortunes with the new colony. Okay, I'm going to see if I can get to the point. Alright. Couple more paragraphs, bear with me. Grand Rising, born free. Okay. There were a few women and children with the Rains and Mansker parties, but none with those led by Robinson and Buchanan. Seeing no signs or Indians on their arrival and having been unmolested on their journey thither, the settlers were inclined to scatter over the country, locating on any body of land they might fancy within a radius of 20 or 25 miles of French Lick. Robinson, however, believed there was trouble ahead, and therefore advised the building of a stockade in which all should come for protection at night. By many, this advice went unheeded, and as a result, they soon came to grief. It was agreed, however, that the stockade at the bluff should be headquarters for the colony. This fort, which was called Bluff Station, was located at the foot of Church Street in what is now the city of Nashville, and near a bold spring, the water of which at that time flowed out of the bank and down the precipice into the river. This spring was filled and lost sight of This spring was filled and lost sight of while the city was in progress of building, but was again uncovered a few years ago by workmen who were excavating for the foundation of a new structure in the vicinity. This fort was to be a place of general council, the seat of government, and together with small village which sprang up immediately around it was officially called Nashboro, in honor of General Francis Nash, a former governor of North Carolina and brigadier general in the Revolutionary Army. He was mortally wounded and died in Georgetown October 4, 1777. The main building in Bluff Fort, which was first occupied by Robinson and two or more companies, was a long structure 2 stories high with port poles around the walls, both above and below. Those were for rifles in case of attack. On top was a lookout station from which sentinels might discover the approaching movements of the enemy. Other cabins were built round about, and whole being enclosed by a circle of cedar pickets driven firmly to the ground. The upper ends of these pickets were sharpened to the point, making it practically impossible to scale. The root wall was thus formed. There was but one entrance to the enclosure, a gate, which by means of a heavy log chain was securely fastened at night. From the lookout on this fort, the settlers might have commanding view of the surrounding country to the west and south beyond Broad Street, and scene was most obstructed by a forest of cedars under which was thick growth of brush. On the uplands and slopes around and beyond, this was an abundance of timber of all varieties, of a gigantic size. The bottomlands along the river and the east and northern were covered by a thick growth of cane from 10 to 25 feet in height, presenting a picture quite in contrast to that which might be viewed today from a similar elevation. So the Treaty of French Lick gave the United States Tennessee, basically.
Yeah, that's what I said. Interesting.
Very.
You seen what they said? He was part of all negotiations.
Yes, all negotiations dealing with the Indians in the South. But you don't really hear about them. So was he an agent or a superintendent?
Could he be our first district superintendent? No, let me stop.
He's so stupid. Oh gosh.
Negotiation.
I know, right? So we were on the Patton and Leslie Company. Talk about the deer skin. So we're going to read about the monopoly of the Indian trade. And then we're going to get back to the Cherokee American War. So we're still on the Patton and Leslie Company. I'm going to put this link back in the chat. So we're reading from the Monopoly of the Indian Trade. In January of 1783, a conference was held in St. Augustine between the representatives of British Crown, Governor Patrick Towne, Brigadier General Archibald MacArthur, and Thomas Brown, the Superintendent of General Affairs, and the headmen and principal warriors of the towns of the Upper and Lower Creeks who accompanied of a long distance. They must travel to stores from which they obtained their supplies. The Indians offered protection to merchants who would move their stores to locations closer to their territory and pointed out the Apalachicola rivers as a suitable place for trading house. The Creeks said it was not only more convenient for themselves but also much nearer to the Choctaw, Chickasaw, and Cherokee Indians, and requested that the house of the Patton Leslie Company, who had been supplying them with goods, should be solicited and settled there for that purpose. So the Indians were the ones that decided where this building was going to be put for the supplies because of convenience. William Patton was present at the conference and agreed with the Indians to establish a store at such a place as he or his co-partners might find suitable between the forks of Flint River and the mouth of the Apalachicola River, provided that letters of license were issued to him and his partners William Alexander, John Leslie, Thomas Forbes, and Charles McLatchy. The agreement was confirmed by the Crown, and the traders were granted the necessary license. She said, sounds like Patent Leather Company, like the shoes. Their stores opened in 1784, by which time Spain had regained possession of Florida and Fort San Marcos de Appalachian, modern day St. Mark's, Florida.
This dead on. That's what they become. Patton and let me hush.
No, that's cool.
See, there you're holding my tongue again.
No, say what you feel, man. It's all good.
Patent and leather, like bones.
This store was attacked and looted by the adventurer William Augusta Bowles in 1792 and again in 1800, at which point it ceased operations. Many different traders and trading houses had vied for a share of the Indian trade on the southern frontier, but few survived long. Patton Leslie and Company made an alliance with Alexander McGillivray, the quarter-blood leader of the Upper Creeks, who became a virtual silent partner in the concern. Wow. Did y'all hear that?
Come on, one more time.
Grand Rising, Copper Color Queen. It says by 1786, when Spain granted Pat and Leslie Company a monopoly over the Indian trade. Hold on, am I reading the right spot? In East and West Florida, the firm owned 250 slaves. Nope, I moved. I went down too far. Okay, here we go. Many different traders and trade houses had vied for a share of the Indian trade on the southern frontier, but few survived long. And I think that had a lot to do with the Indians not wanting it to survive long. Pat and Leslie and Company made an alliance with Alexander McGillivray, the quarter-blood leader of the Upper Creeks, who became a virtual silent partner in the concern. So you know what that means. He's getting paid for being a partner with them because he is the one that's getting the Indians to protect this company and make it a monopoly. William Patton knew his father, Lachlan McGillivray, a prosperous Scots planter and a deerskin trader himself, and recognized Alexander's ability since he was a child. Now it all started to make sense. In 1786, when Spain granted Pat and Leslie and Company a monopoly over the Indian trade in East and West Florida, the firm owned 250 slaves and 19 individual land grants in Florida's encompassing 12,820 acres. Most of the slaves worked on company plantations and cattle ranches, but a few had specialized jobs, e.g. the company rented out its slave language to Spanish government as an Indian interpreter. The truth came out. Did y'all catch that? It says the company rented out its slave linguist to the Spanish government as an Indian interpreter. So some of these quote-unquote slaves were Indian interpreters. Well, we know Africans didn't speak Indian languages. So these slaves had to be Indians.
If you got an Indian interpreter.
Working in partnership with Alexander McGillivray, Pat and Leslie and Company were able to expand their operations from East Florida and the Bahamas to the Mississippi River. Patton had promised McGillivray a one-fifth share of the company's profits once it obtained Spanish approval. The headquarters at Spanish Pensacola by 1795, the company had a near monopoly on trade with Native American tribes in the southeast. Its presence reaching northward from its headquarters in Pensacola to Fort San Fernando, formerly known as Chickasaw Bluffs, on the site of present-day Memphis. The westward as far as New Orleans, with posts at Mobile and several locations in Florida, the Bahamas, and around the Caribbean. The Indian trade was generally an exchange between the colonies and Native Americans of the commodities each party desired but did not produce. Again, being the middleman. Grand Rising Doodle Vision, the link is available for you. The company was a major buyer from the Indians of hogs and cattle, either live on the hoof as smoked or salted meat or as skins. Also purchased indigo plants, hides, furs, corn, cattle, tallow, pitch, tar, hickory, nut oil, tobacco, myrtle wax, salted wild beef, sassafras, canes, and truck produced in exchange for weapons, gunpowder, tools, cloths, dyes, liquor, and various trinkets. Packhorse trains were outfitted with European-made goods, primarily guns, powder, flint, rum, and various dry goods. At Pensacola and the company's other warehouse, then sent to Indian villages in the interior, from which they rented with deerskin, furs, bear oil, honey, and foodstuffs. The company's agents ran stores in Indian villages scattered from St. Johns River in East Florida to Mississippi and from the Gulf Coast to Tennessee. The depot at Pensacola comprised a store and warehouse where the furs and skins were stored and packed for shipment to foreign markets in schooners or brigantines belonging to the firm's fleet of 15 vessels. Doodle Vision said guns and rum on both sides. Oh, now they want to talk about use of African slaves. Really? That's what we doing? So we don't start hearing about African slaves until the late 1780s. Where are these slaves at before then? But I digress. After its arch enemy, the adventurer and self-styled Director General of Muskogee Nation, William Augustus Bowles, had been sent to Morro Prison in Havana in 1783, Pat Leslie and Company emerged as a multinational power broker acting in league with the plantation masters of the Lower South. For almost 20 years, deerskins acquired from the Creeks and Seminoles had been shipped in the company's vessels to its massive warehouse in Nassau, where they were stored in other traded goods purchased from the markets in the Southeast for redistribution to the mainland markets. Some bulk goods were sold to Bahamian merchants for retailing locally and in the outer islands. The Bahamian trade was managed by John Forbes. The company also was part owner of salt works on Providence Island, the product of which was sent to Pensacola, where it was vended to the Indians for high profits. The company controlled the East Florida trade with dozen posts, including 5 on both banks. On St. Johns River in West Florida, the Pensacola store alone took in 250,000 hides in a peak year. Patton's Salt Works dried fish and tanned hides. Leslie Lumberman on St. John's cut timber for a sale in the West Indies, where wood was scarce, and his drovers herded cattle to a slaughter for salt beef. At such trading stores as Almacén de Nuestro Señora de la Concepción on the river's west bank, slaves tended the company's corn and vegetable crops fields, herded cattle, and tanned deerskin from the Indian towns. Other slaves processed the hides for export at the warehouse in St. Augustine. Now let me stop for a second. The title can be very misleading because we already know that after the war, there were Indians that were made slaves, and some of them were sent to the islands, or some were already on the islands when they lost the war. So then they put in the title, Exploration of Native Americans and Use of African Slaves. But when they say slaves, they don't say African slaves. They just say slaves. But it was already mentioned in the previous paragraphs that there were Indian slaves. So why did they do that? What narrative are they trying to create? Because at no time do they talk about any of these businesses purchasing slaves from Africa or from a ship, dropping them off. Just a thought. Now, if there is, I would like to see the manifest or the purchase order, but I don't know, maybe it's just me. So, third paragraph. The travel writer John Page, who visited the region in 1790 on his tour of the southern and western territories of the United States, inquired into the accounting and profits generated by the Indian trade and concluded that William Patton generally sold his goods for 500% of prime cost, meaning it was a 500% markup. Most of its earliest days, the trade had yielded high returns. The apparently enormous profits were a matter of concern to some government officials and leaders of the Creeks, yet this business did involve risk and substantial legitimate expenses. So even the Creeks knew that he was overcharging. Over the years, Chickasaws and Choctaws and the Creeks had incurred enormous debts to Patton, Leslie, and Company. They eventually ceded millions of acres of land to the United States, using the proceeds to pay off those debts. This resulted in the United States acquiring millions of acres of land within the current boundaries of Alabama and Mississippi. Among the most effective firms and merchants participating in the slave trade of East and West Florida were Patton Leslie Company, Alverdano, and soon Zacchaeus Kinsley, and John Fraser. Eventually and jointly, they imported at least 10 groups of captive Africans, totaling 1,260 people to Florida between 1802 and 1811. Ah, this is where the slaves come in. So they only imported 1,260 African slaves.
And the year again was when?
Between 1802 and 1811. But they mention this at the bottom of the paragraph. You don't want to say he flipping deer skin like it's the best thing smoking. Oak Cliff says they kept all his documentation and they can't Uber any of us to a living relative's tribe. Y'all are funny. Antonio says need to take a minute to dwell on this point. Oh, I am Antonio. So here's a point that needs to be taken into consideration. It goes on to state that over the years, the Choctaw, Chickasaws, and Creeks had incurred enormous debts to Patton, Leslie, and Company. What normally happens when you acquire a lot of debt that you can't pay off? You normally end up having to work that debt off, right? Well, if you're already working and your job is to protect and the trade routes, how you gonna do that and work? Especially if the debt is incurring so high because of a 500% mark off, till now you can't pay the debt back with your labor. If you can't pay the debt back with your labor, what must you pay the debt back with? Any assets that you have. What assets did the Indians have? Acres. So because they were not able to do the work to pay back the debt that was continuing to mount every month, they end up having to cede the land. That's another way the land got stolen. Exactly, Copper Color Queen Collateral. Just
Found
another.
something interesting here. I posted it in the back chat as well.
Okay.
You know, every sellout mentioned about these timelines and just doing them worldwide. They said by 1802 to 1811 they moved that many, right?
Mm-hmm.
Guess what was going down in 1811?
What?
It says 1811 German Coast Uprising was a revolt of black slaves in parts of the territory of Orleans. On January 8th through the 10th, 1811, the uprising occurred on the east bank of the Mississippi River in what is now St. John the Baptist, St. Charles, and Jefferson's parishes, Louisiana. While the slave insurgent was the largest in U.S. history, the rebels killed only 2 white men, confrontations with militia, and executions after the trial killed 95 black people. Could it be that's where they moved these people that they call slaves in Florida? The Indians from the revolts over there with the Germans in Louisiana? I'm just saying, brain be working fast when I be hearing these years and dates like, hold on now, too much going on to fool me. No.
I mean, you got a very great point. Because it does coincide. It says between 1802 and 1811, John Fraser, it says, individually and jointly, they imported at least 10 groups of captive Africans, totaling 1,260 people to Florida between 1802 and 1811. And where was this uprising?
In Louisiana. Yes, so the uprising occurred on the east bank of the Mississippi River in what is now St. John the Baptist, St. Charles, and Jefferson's parishes in Louisiana.
James Flame says, now we're getting it. He says, West Africans come out to play. He says, just before the Louisiana Purchase. It's crazy.
You happen to click on the page, on that link in the back chat?
Yeah, I see it. I put the link back in the chat.
Scroll down to the bottom and look at the picture of Toussaint.
Scroll down, look at the picture of Toussaint. Wow. You can't get no darker than that.
He was the leader of the revolt.
He don't look like no slave.
He was a French general and best known leader of the Haitian Revolution. He was a leader of the growing resistance. His military and political accomplishments saved the gains of the first black insurrection in November 1791. He first fought for the Spanish against the French, then for the French against Spain and Great Britain, and finally he fought in behalf of Saint Domingo in the area of Napoleonic France. He helped transform the slave insurgents into a revolutionary movement. By 1800, Saint Domingo, the most prosperous French slave colony of the time, had become the first free colony society to have expelled rejected race as the basis of social ranking.
How much you want to bet he was either Choctaw, Seminole, or somewhere along those lines?
You know I'm already on it.
We get into the middle of the 1800s, and all of a sudden we starting to hear about slaves. Come on now. So the slaves they've been hiding the slaves all that time. Doodle Vision said same person fought on 5 different sides. It's crazy. But do y'all see how this game was played? The Europeans end up being the middleman for our trade. Then they started charging so much tax to where we couldn't pay. And then they say, okay, well, you could just work it off. Well, as you're working it off, you're still going into debt. So there are not enough hours in a day for you to work it off and do your job. So they go, oh, no worries, just give us some of your land, and then we'll call a debt even. Come on, man. So that's how you go from being a slave on your own land to giving up your land. All because you went into business with them. Antonio says, sound familiar? Real familiar. Fraud. Well, we participated in it. We seen this song and dance many times over, and we still participated in it. So that was a Pat and Leslie company. And how we helped them become a monopoly. Go figure. Antonio said, it's a trap. It's all a trap. Mentally, physically, and spiritually. It's only a trap if you let it be a trap. We have to get better at asking the right questions and not just accepting anything that someone tells us. I'm just saying. Free said fraud, waste, and abuse. Nothing new under the sun. Exactly. Darian Wood says, man, he was even doing that back then, helping other people get up when we down. You know. So I'm gonna put the link back to the Cherokee American Wars, because I know we've been some everywhere today. You said recap it again when the Africans show up. Well, the Africans don't show up until, let's see, the Africans don't show up until 1802 to 1811, and it's only 1,260 of them.
And we really can't say that this set is African.
Nope.
Because what's going on in Louisiana at the time? We got to remember what Louisiana and Florida, what the borders look like at this time back then, not what they look like now. So when they be saying Florida, you probably be thinking South Florida and all this and that. No, remember, Georgia, what it is today, didn't exist yet.
Grand Rising, David Corey.
Remember, if you went south of Tennessee at this time, you was in Florida.
Doodoo says the colonizers were shaking the Indians down like the gangsters in New York make the business pay rent. Golden Moon says, can't get yourself out the hole, huh? Hold up. Did you see my deer and goods on my land? Then sell it back to us? Boy, they slick. Yes, they are. So yeah, the timelines are important, and if we start doing research on what's going on in the surrounding areas during the time all these treaties are being signed and all this information is being put out, we'll start to see how things coincide. See, this is something that we weren't taught to do. We were just taught to take the information in linearly and not look at it from a standpoint of a lot of this stuff was going on simultaneously. It's not a linear situation. So no sellout. Where you at, bro?
Mm-hmm. I'm right here. What's good?
So where are we at? We're back at the Cherokee American Wars. The second paragraph of the Spanish Alliance. Right under where it reads Pat and Leslie and Company in Pensacola. That's where you stopped off at. Iron Flying Squirrel says the tax percentage was high back then. Yeah, it was. So you see it? No worries.
Yep, no.
I'll go ahead and read it if you can't find it. It says, sponsored by the Spanish running Watertown, hosted in Grand Council of Western Nations and Tribes in summer of 1785 to formulate a strategy for resisting encroachment by settlers from the United States. Besides, the Chickamauga Cherokee, the Upper Muskogee, and Choctaw attended from the south, while representatives from the Shawnee, Lenape, Mingo, Miami, Illinois, Wyandotte, Ottawa, Mohawk, Kickapoo, Kaskaskia, Ottawa, Potawatomi, Ojibwa, Wabash Confederacy, and the Iroquois League came from the north. The same parties met again under sponsorship of the British at Detroit in the fall of 1785. The parties at those two councils agreed among themselves and with their sponsors to deal with the Americans as a unit. This laid the groundwork for the Confederacy formally established the next year. That's a lot of Indians, yo. A lot of Indians. Let me read that again. These are the Indians that are coming together to form a confederacy to resist the encroachment from the United States. So I'm gonna read it again. Chickamauga Cherokee, Upper Muskogee, a Choctaw. These are from the South, while representatives from the Shawnee, Lenape, Mingo, Miami, Illinois, Wyandotte, Ottawa, Mohawk, Kickapoo, Kaskaskia, Ottawa, Potawatomi, Ojibwe, Wabash, the Wabash Confederacy, and the Iroquois League came from the north. Doodle Vision says sponsors, eh? Yeah, they were sponsored by the British. Now wait a minute. Didn't the British get beat and sign that treaty in Paris? The Treaty of Paris? No? Okay, never mind. And this would explain why there were a lot more Indians from the north and the south. Because now at this particular time, Britain is in charge of what is now in charge of what is now Canada, which the French had, but they ceded to Britain for a while. Got to keep up with the land grab and the shell game, guys. Doodle Vision says, yes, this leads to the War of 1812. Man, there's always wars. I mean, it's like there are hardly ever any breaks. Tecumseh. Yep.
How are you supposed to stay in shape?
Doodle Vision says the British kicked the Acadians out. Wow, that I didn't know. So, you want to read some of this Over Mountain Region paragraph?
Over Mountain Majesty, yeah. With these assurances, Over Mountain Region is what we're reading, if y'all can find it. With these assurances of support, the Cherokee of the lower towns renewed raiding the Over Mountain settlements that summer. These remained only sporadic until the fall, when an incident between one of the settlers, John Hubbard, and a noted Cherokee leader in the Overhill towns, Noonday, brought the younger Overhill warriors into the fight and incited them all to more violence. This could be considered the start of a Southwest Indian War fought by the Cherokee and later the Muskogee too. In May 1785, the settlements of Upper East Tennessee, then comprising of counties of western North Carolina, petitioned the Congress of the Confederation to be recognized as the state of Franklin.
What? Hold on.
Hold on. Yeah, in May 1785, the settlements of Upper East Tennessee, then comprising of 4 counties of western North Carolina, petitioned the Congress of the Confederation to be recognized as the state of Franklin.
The state of Franklin.
Quote unquote.
Go ahead.
That's also the Free Republic of Franklin. Yeah. So, did I just lose my place again?
Probably did.
Clicking that link, man. This is like the longest.
Doodle Vision said the Acadians got pushed further south. These were the Germans trying to take over the port of New Orleans, aka Cajuns. Right. Antonio Batiste says Franklin. Furman. Sounds racist.
German. Racist. Yeah, I didn't even read. I knew he was going with that. German, racist. Okay. In May 1785, the settlements of Upper East Tennessee. I already read that. Even though their petition failed to receive the 2/3 votes necessary to qualify, they proceeded to organize what amounted to a secessionist government, holding their first, quote, state assembly in December 1785. One of their chief motives was to retain the foothold they had recently gained in the Cumberland Basin. The Cumberland settlements were included in the government, but being separated by a wide stretch of hostile Cherokee territory, they were essentially autonomous.
Really? That's interesting. Here come another treaty, y'all.
One of the first acts of the new state of Franklin was to negotiate with the Overhill towns the Treaty of Dumpling Creek, signed on June 10th, 1785, which ceded the territory, quote, territory south of the French Broad and Holston Rivers and west of the Big Pigeon River and east of the ridge dividing Little River from the Tennessee River, end quote, to the state of Franklin.
Stop. Come on. Come on.
Come on, buddy. Come on, buddy.
Another treaty. Another land session.
And that ain't even no hot link. Treaty of Dumpling Creek.
Let's see if I can find it. Look, they did at least make it and put it in bold, right?
Mm-hmm. They didn't want to sneak it too far past you. At least can look back for it.
Let me see if I can. The Treaty of Dumpling Creek. The lost state of Franklin. Let me see what we find.
We were talking some of the treaty of chicken and dumplings.
So, they got a web page. For what it's worth, I'll put it in the chat. The lost state of Franklin. Franklin's only treaty. Signed on June 10, 1785, the Treaty of Dumpling Creek was the only such document made by the state of Franklin. The Commissioner of Governors, John Seaver, that name sounds familiar, doesn't it? Was joined by the signature of Cherokee chiefs, King of the Cherokee, Okono and Chota Abraham of Chilhowee, the Sturgeon of Tallahassee, and the border of the Valley Towns. The treaty ceded territory south of the French border and Holston Rivers, west of the Big Pigeons River, and east of the ridge, dividing Little River from the Tennessee River to the state of Franklin. And then it's got the conflict. Land of Three Empires. Franklin versus North Carolina, Franklin versus Cherokee Indians. It talks about the letter from John Seaver to Native Americans. Seaver's alarmed at the threat of the Cherokee attack. So the Cherokee apparently was attacking this town that came together to try to form the state of Franklin, but North Carolina had an issue with that because that was probably encroaching on their land. Well, Pamela Hall, the treaty was worth the paper that was printed on in order to get the land. It won't worth anything to the Indians because they thought by giving up land, they would be able to stop the encroachment. But every time they gave up land, there was more encroachment, which caused more wars, which caused them to give up more land. So I see your point.
On the page, TMH?
Am I still on what page? The lost state of Franklin?
Yeah.
Yeah, I clicked on the conflict.
But hold on. There's something very interesting that they put right in front of your face.
What that is?
If you go back to it and you scroll down and you see the picture, right?
Mm-hmm.
Pictures say black and white photography of Cherokee men in native attire headdress commemorating the Treaty of Dumpling Creek. All right?
Mm-hmm.
So, how? If the treaty was signed in 1785?
What do you mean?
Camera.
I mean, there are different there are different explanations of when photography came into play.
Well, when you look at this picture, this definitely ain't no 1785.
No,
like 1950.
I know, right? Look, with that truck, right? I know, right? You see, that's not a truck, that's a wagon. Don't ignore the rims. Grand Rising, Alfred Jones, Prince William County Rams representing. Ignore the
Maybe
Rams.
they art director need to be fired on the spot because that's supposed to be
Man,
1785.
this is like the moon landing, man. What is this? Is whack.
Woo!
Yeah, don't ignore that. Ignore all the 17 and 1800 information that you see. So ignore that. Just ignore it. Just ignore it. It's okay though. Don't believe your lying eyes. Believe our honest words. So yeah, we're talking about the lost state of Franklin. So I wonder what North Carolina's issue with Franklin was. Let's see. It says competition between two prominent back county areas polarized them as a bitter partisan contest arose. From January 1786 winter to 1787, Franklinites fought intensely for their political sovereignty, but events such as William Crook's failed congressional lobbying efforts, escalation of opposition to statehood, and contrary North Carolina political legislation threatened it. In 1775, the General Assembly issued a manifesto condemning the establishment of the state of Franklin. The state of Franklin failed to get approval from the U.S. Congress, North Carolina legislature, or any national public figure in order to affirm their movement to statehood. Three things threatened the community on the home front. Cherokee Indians, that's a big one, competing state bureaucracies, intense local factionalism. Is that a word? Further hostilities arose between Franklin and North Carolina as high-level meetings were carried out, but then caused an inability for a secure agreement between the two states to be carried out. Franklinites became increasingly desperate, but even the inevitable downfall of the state could not convince its residents to give up on their cause. During the state's final months, a violent clash arose between the communities of Tennessee Valley, leaving the region in shambles and the state in ruins. Wow. Pamela says, I did some research yesterday and one of my grandfather had a duel when he was a rival. And he was part of the House of Burgess. Really? That's interesting, Pamela. We got to get with you and find out a little bit more about that. Good stuff. Keep doing the great work. Lost state of Franklin. Anything else you want to add about the lost state of Franklin, Bones? And these bad pictures? You sure? I mean, sure you don't want to point anything else out? About how they lie?
They should have just left them blank.
Okay, just checking. Just checking. All right. So you ready? No sellout.
Kind of. Man, when y'all be posting links, I click the link and then I'm away from where I was at last every single time.
Stop clicking the link. If it hurts when you do that, don't do that. If it messes you up when you do that, don't do that. So you want me to read? Because I'll go ahead and read it.
You forgot that
yeah, until I catch up.
What'd you say, Bones?
You forgot the famous saying that we know.
What? Doodle Vision says North Carolina had a problem because North Carolina was once a part of Francois. Yeah, that makes sense.
Yeah, I find it. Thank you.
Did you find it?
Mm-hmm.
Okay, I'm ready when you're ready.
You're at the Cherokee and Overhill, right? Cherokee and the Overhill.
Yeah, yep. That's correct.
All right. Cherokee in the Overhill. The Cherokee in the Overhill, Hill, and Valley Towns signed the Treaty of Hopewell with the United States government on November 28, 1785, under duress. The frontier colonials by this time having spread further along the Holston and onto the French Broad. Several leaders from the lower Cherokee signed, including 2 from Chickamauga Town, which had been rebuilt, and 1 from Stakoye.
So, Treaty of Hopewell. How many treaties are there? Doodle Vision says the French Acadians were hanging tough like the 80s boy band. Really? I'm not touching that one. Oh, but this one has a link. Let's click it. Treaty of Hopewell. I'll read it. No sellout. Don't click the link.
It's so tempting.
The Treaty of Hopewell is of 3 different treaties signed at Hopewell Plantation. Okay, so the Treaty of Hopewell is 3 different treaties, not plantations, signed at the plantation of Andrew Pickens. Y'all know that name, right? Scorching the Earth. The plantation was owned by Andrew Pickens and was located in the Seneca River in northwestern South Carolina. The treaties were signed between the Confederation Congress and the United States of America and the Cherokee Chickamauga, Choctaw, and Chickasaw peoples. The historic site of the Treaty Oak, where the signings took place, is on Old Cherry Road in Pickens County, South Carolina. There is a historical marker placed near the bridge crossing Lake Hartwell and a trail through the forest that allows access to the monument. The actual treaty oak is no longer alive. The Bama's killed it, I bet. On November 28th, 1785, the first Treaty of Hopewell, meaning there were others, signed between U.S. Representative Benjamin Hawkins and the Cherokee Indians. The treaty laid out a western boundary for American settlement. The treaty gave rise to the sardonic Cherokee phrase, "a talking leaves," since they claimed that when the treaties no longer suited the Americans, they would blow away like talking leaves.
Yeah, that sound about right. Yep, that sound about right.
A description of the boundary is found on Article 4 of the Accord. The boundary allotted to the Cherokee for their hunting grounds between the said Indians and the citizens of the United States within the limits of the United States of America is and shall be the following, viz. Beginning at the mouth of Duck River on the Tennessee, thence running northeast to the ridge dividing the waters running into Cumberland from those running into the Tennessee, thence eastwardly along the said ridge to the northeast line to be run, which shall strike the river Cumberland 40 miles north above Nashville, thence along the sideline to the river, thence up the said river to the ford where the Kentucky Road crosses the river, thence to Campbell's Line near Cumberland Gap, thence to the mouth of Clouds Creek on Holston, thence to the Chimney Top Mountain, thence to Camp Creek near the mouth of Big Limestone on Nolichucky, thence a southern course 6 miles to a mountain, thence south of the North Carolina line, thence to North Carolina line boundary, and along the same southwest over the top of the Oconee Mountain, till it shall strike Tougaloo River, thence a direct line to the top of the Cudahy Mountain, thence to the land of the South Fork of Oconee River. Included in the signatures of the Cherokee delegation were several from leaders of the Chickamauga Lower Cherokee, including 2 from the town of Chickamauga itself and 1 from Lookout Mountain Town. The Cherokee complained that the Cherokee complained at the treaty that some 3,000 white settlers of the de facto state of Franklin were already squatting on the Cherokee side of the line between the Holston and the French border rivers, and they continued to dispute that region until the new border was defined by the 1791 Treaty of Holston. Again, same game. 3,000 white settlers were already squatting on Cherokee side. Who you think drew those borders? Remember, they were surveyors, right?
Mm-hmm.
So it went from a couple of squatters in the early 1700s to thousands by the late 1700s.
So the question you need to ask, if the number of these immigrants is growing and they're coming over on these ships, where do you got supposed to be bringing anybody else over here as a slave?
And if you're bringing immigrants by the thousands over, and the food is going to be stored at the bottom for these immigrants, where the slaves going to be held at? I'll wait.
They're gonna be in the water, maybe.
So you just gonna drown them all the way over here?
No, I mean they can help push the boat or something. I don't know. Hold on to the boat, kick your feet. I don't know.
I don't know either. I'm just saying. It is what it is. And it ain't what it ain't.
You can't even use your imagination for some of this stuff.
Alright. Peace, Pamela Hall. Have fun with the garden. Save me a cucumber.
They tell you 400 people on the bottom of a ship. You know how much fresh water you would need?
For 400 people?
And seeing they keep talking about slaves trying to be like bad conditions. Let's use common sense. You're not spending all this money, all these resources, go cross the water to get a labor force, beat them and break them down, to bring them over here to put them to work. That's the dumbest idea for business.
Maybe they were dumb.
Yeah, not that dumb. Not that dumb. So now we understand how the squatters, the surveyors, and the government are actually taking land from our ancestors. Not to mention our own quarter blood chiefs. Because remember, by this time they're quarter blood. By the time they get to the leadership now, they're 8th and 1/16 blood.
Y'all hear that, man, fam?
Doodle Vision said, I'll say it again, West Africans come out to play. I think this is a good place to stop for now. Ladarian Wood says, how many people would it take to do that? And do you really think people are going to let other people just take millions of people and nobody fight? That's a good question, Ladarian. I mean, I don't mean no harm, but you're just not coming in my neighborhood just gonna start jacking people. Especially if we on the coast and I see you coming. And you can't get but so many people on a small boat at a time. It's not like you bringing a whole ship and docking right on the boat, on the shore, and everybody getting off. No, you gotta bring them in a couple people at a time. That's enough time for me to start taking out some folk. And if you see people dying on shore while you in this little rowboat, you might turn around and get back on your ship and head the other direction. I'm just saying.
What's even worse, they want you to believe that these people were so passive and so dumbfounded that they got caught and captured on their own land, right? Dragged across seas and got over here and got rebellious. Huh? Think about it. Ain't man one of them. You don't never hear no stories about none of the houses or tribes over there fighting against no Spanish, no Europeans, nobody to stop their people from being taken away as slaves. Not
Nope.
saying that it's not. I haven't came across not one document yet.
Doodle Vision says, how many licks does it take to get to the center of a Tootsie Pop? 1, 2, 3. Do you mean how many French licks?
It's crazy.
Crazy is an understatement. Come on, man.
They get over here. Now they just rebelling. They in a foreign land rebelling, but they wouldn't fight in their own land.
No, don't forget. Not only are they rebelling, they're rebelling without their language, without their own food, and they're farming on a land they know nothing about. The last time I checked, warriors were not farmers, and farmers were not warriors. I mean, so you're going to come over here and farm and grow tobacco when tobacco doesn't grow in Africa. When you're going to grow cotton when cotton don't grow in Africa. Okay. Well, who was teaching y'all how to grow this stuff? And how the colonizers know how to grow this stuff when they didn't have those things over there where they was from?
My question, I want to know what Europeans spoke all them different African dialects. First set of people that they brought over so they can tell these Africans, well, I need you to plow this right here like this. Or I need you to pick this right here. I mean, somebody had to know a whole lot of languages if you just want us to believe that you just on the continent, you just randomly, hey, let me get you, let me get you, let me get you. Yeah, I'm going to take a couple of you. Everybody speak a different dialect. Who was translating all this? What Europeans spoke every African dialect in the area where they were going? I don't care who you snatch. If you can't communicate with them, how they know understand what you want them to do? Where's the comprehension and the directions that you're trying to give?
Going on says, how y'all communicate?
I mean, really? I'm talking about them first couple of hundreds of thousands that they try to take that bought over. Who communicated with these people?
Antonio says, I don't know, but we can't belittle the plight of all slaves because we can't fathom how. Well, we're not belittling the plight of all slaves. We're just asking questions. And there are no answers. That's all I'm saying.
The records that you do say, or what they say, where you can track people back to that continent, is the Spanish taking 73 and dispersing 73 Africans among the islands. But you don't never see no large records, and I mean actual records so far in the archives showing this. You only see small numbers where it's 20 or 15, and they're never making it to the mainland. These set of Africans are being dispersed between the islands out there and parts of South America.
Doodle Vision says, I hear West Africans mumbling under their breath. I'm really beginning not to like those A2 guys.
I mean, it's a documented fact that they tell you the British, out of the whole so-called Atlantic slave trade, the British slaves from Africa and all this and that, it's only 5% of the whole slave trade. So if they're talking about 12 million now, and only 5% of that made it here to the mainland, only 5%. Now, how are you an African again? And that's not knocking or disrespecting anybody. I'm just like, that's mathematics.
Math.
It's not like they bought like 100,000 African men and 100,000 African women. The majority of this, if you're bringing people over to work to be slaves, it's going to be men. Because when you're first coming here and you setting up, you need some hard physical labor done. Let's just use common sense here. So who are them men mating with? The rights and stuff get passed down through the mother, and you identify from what your mother is, what would them children be? Even if you did have 300,000 Africans, the majority of them men coming over here, by second generation, what would they be classified? What would they be known as now?
Indian.
Oh, I'm just like rambling. Forgive me.
Doodle Vision says, show me one West African song of lamentation. Because I mean, they would have had it, because they would have been singing in their own language until they got beat out of them, right? Antonio says, for all we know, Master shows them how to plow, pushes somebody down to do what he showed. They do it wrong, he slits their throat. Next.
Hold on. That sound good, but let's remember what we got. You are not purchasing an employee, paying for insurance. Because remember, they had insurance on slaves.
Yep.
You wasn't paying for insurance, housing and clothing.
You just had liable on that one.
Yeah. Then you're going to turn around and take a complete loss. No. Come on. This was business. You ain't paying no money like that to turn around just to lose it.
English was a universal language, right? No. Okay. Making sure. Just checking. Just you sure? What year was this? This not now? Okay. All right.
And again, Antonio, here's a question: if you have a plantation, right, and you have Africans on that plantation, and they're slaves, why is it when the Indians are raiding these plantations, the overseer never sees them? Because he's the one that's guarding the area so that the slaves don't run away. Why do you never hear of any overseers being massacred by these Indians? I'll wait. Because they would have been the first ones to be taken out. They would be the first ones to ring the alarm. Why are there no records of Africans being freed during Indian raids on the land? Because there were lots of raids. We still in the 1700s. Well, Antonio, he says, my overall point, no matter who's right, which nobody knows, we have to be considerate how other people feel and speak them on their level. That's how you lose people. Can't be pompous. Well, Antonio, I'm not being pompous, but what I'm trying to explain to you is when you ask questions that people can't answer, and then when you have people that are tied to their tribes, and those tribes say the same things that we're saying, but there is nobody from a captive African American situation that can speak to being a slave, then what are we forced to do? Are we forced to listen to somebody that doesn't know what they're talking about, or do we listen to those that were here and that have documented proof? That's not being pompous. That's just looking at the facts. And again, I've done my genealogy back to 1790. I don't see any slaves in my ancestry. There are no Africans in my genealogy. And I know you're asking because you're being objective, so this is not attacking you. I'm just addressing what you're saying. But at the end of the day, Tiffany says, how do we explain slave narratives traced to Nigeria or slave narratives to Priscilla traced to Sierra Leone? I haven't seen those slave narratives, and I can only speak on what's going on in the areas that we know about.
Well, some of it is simple, see, because I've been reading, like a lot of y'all know, I've been reading up on the Spanish history over the last week. When you come to find out, a lot of these places like Sierra Leone and Nigeria, when you study their history, they're colonies of Spain or colonies of France. And when you study the records, you come to find out that they do have records of taking Indians from here to these places. Like Sierra Leone have a large population of Indians that got taken over there. And it's not saying that everybody's an Indian, and it's not saying that everybody's an African. What it's saying is there's some holes in the story. You know, there's a lot of holes in the story.
And also too, I'm in Woodbridge. Anybody that knows anything about Woodbridge knows there are a lot of people from Ghana here. There are people from Ghana telling me that the majority of us are Indians. I've talked to a gentleman that's from Liberia, and we was having a conversation, and I told him I was like, you know, your people are from originally from South Carolina, North Carolina, and he looked at me and he was like, and also Virginia. His last name is Smith. So I'm not just speaking from a standpoint of what I'm reading. I'm speaking from a standpoint of talking to Africans and Liberians and people from places like Sierra Leone. So I understand people's concerns, and I'm not saying, and nor have we said that everybody that is melanated and that lives in the United States is African. All I'm saying is I haven't seen anything to support. I haven't seen any proof. And as a business owner who studies international business and understands ship records, I have yet to find any ship records that support that massive ship movement. I'm not saying it doesn't exist. I'm saying I haven't seen it. I can only speak on what I've seen, what I've known, and the people that I've talked to. That's all I can speak on. I can't speak on nothing I haven't seen. So that's just my premise. Again, I'm not saying that everybody, is American Indian. That's not what I'm saying. I'm saying I haven't seen anybody prove that everybody came from Africa. So hopefully that helps, and hopefully people will continue to listen. The reason why we're here is to share this information so that we all can find the truth, and we all can find the facts, and we all can find the proof. And as we're starting to see, narratives can easily be changed based off of who's the author. But if I'm talking to Africans and they telling me they know that we not from Africa, and they from Africa, and I ain't never been to Africa, I mean, so my question is what's their agenda for lying to me? Antonio says you got mixed listeners that may not know that they're mixed yet. Gotta be delicate with the conversation. I'm thinking for the future. I'm sure y'all not trying to put A2 in a box. I digress. Let's move. It's all good. I mean, but this is a conversation that needs to be had. And all we're doing is asking questions. Again, that's the reason why we put the links in the chat. That's the reason why we constantly ask for correction. If we're making a statement that's false, then it's already been done. I'm the first one to apologize. I have no problem with that. I have no problem with admitting when I'm wrong.
And what he did was what was it was bound to happen anyway. So
right.
Asking that question, keep asking.
Yeah. Well, I got some information to add on to it because a lot of people don't know, because they don't actually get the chance to study a lot of these places. But have anybody ever asked themselves what's the official language of Sierra Leone?
No, what is it?
English.
Okay.
English.
Tiffany Cook.
Let me give some quick history real quick.
Okay.
Sierra Leone was a British crown colony from 1808 to April 2017, 1961. I'm finna say it again. Sierra Leone was a British colony from 1808. So what was it before 1808?
I don't know. What was it?
No, I'm just leaving it at that. For people where they be like they trace back to Sierra Leone, you have to remember it was a colony. It was just a colony to where they bought people. So yes, you might have some people that can trace back there, but that does not mean that that's that person's homeland still. You still have to do the genealogy because we know there's records of Indians being taken from the mainland to over there.
Mm-hmm.
Liberia, we know that with Nigeria, we know that with Sierra Leone. Just a little history on that real quick. So if they wanted to look a little bit further into it.
And Doodle Vision says Oladua Akana was from South Carolina and was taken to England. So hopefully that answers your question. And yes, Tiffany,
Oh,
Africa
yeah.
Africa was colonized, but the question that needs to be asked was by whom and for what? Because there are many people from South Carolina, North Carolina, who can tell you when their ancestors went to Liberia. Matter of fact, there's a main drag of road in Manassas called Liberia Avenue. And the first president of Liberia is actually from Richmond, Virginia.
That's Ola Equiano was from South Carolina and was taken to England.
Yeah.
Well, that's what you said. Okay.
No, that's what I was trying to say. You know, some. Hey, please forgive me for messing up a name.
It's all right. We all do it. I ain't no expert. I just know I've seen that last name before, Equiano.
Yeah. So again, we are not saying that everybody that's melanated in America is from Africa. What we're merely asking, because it's always a question. Afua Jones says she lived in Liberia. And what we're merely asking is, where is this documentation of all of these slaves that came from Africa? That's all we're asking. I'm not saying it didn't exist. I'm just making a statement of question. And again, Tiffany, we're not saying that there were no Africans that came over here that weren't slaves. That's not what we're saying. Please don't misunderstand us. And nor are we saying that everybody is Indian. That's not what we're saying. Oh, Afua says, no, I live off of Liberia and Manassas.
Yeah, that was an honest mix-up right there. Because I was like, wow, that's cool. I'm ready to hear about something.
Yeah. And again, this is how we always start our show. If an individual actually finds out that they have African in their genealogy, we don't have a problem with helping them not only trace their genealogy, but also trace them exactly to the house that they belong to. My goal is not to tell you that you're not African. That's not my goal. My goal is to help you do your genealogy and connect to your tribe, whoever that tribe is.
Can I get it a third time, just for the people that don't know who we are?
Yeah, our goal here is to help you do your genealogy and connect to any tribe that you find. It's not just, it doesn't have to be American Indian or what have you. Whatever your tribe is, if you want to be connected to, we'll do all we can to help you. We're not saying that you have to be Indian or connect to Indian for us to help you. That's not what we're about. We're just here to help you do your genealogy and find out who you really are. Because we understand that there are people who have family that traces back to Africa. And that's fine. But I would rather for you to know than to speculate. That's all I'm saying. Tiffany says, speaking to those who are mixed. And again, we all are mixed with something. So I'm finding out that I have a lot of Acadians in my family. So yeah, and the more I dig, the more I find. So you're absolutely right, Tiffany. What we're doing is we're just exposing people to information that they may not have known about and having them look deeper into the treaties and ask exactly what happened to all these Indians that were supposedly had disappeared once the Europeans got here. Not everybody died of smallpox. Not everybody was taken up in spaceships or what have you. So Alfred Jones says, but I can't say my people are from North Carolina, but can trace back to the Crew people of Liberia. Golden Moon says, I would love the manifesto papers. I mean, Bones actually has a 10 gigs of information that we're actually moving over to the website of all of the or a large majority of the ship's manifestos that came from all the continents to the United States. So the information will be available, so people can actually go do the research on that. So yeah, Alfred Jones says, as we know, the Liberians were brought here from North Carolina. Not only North Carolina, Alfred, but I've talked to a gentleman who's from Liberia who said he was brought here. He was brought there. His great 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 grandfather was brought from Virginia. So it was Virginia and the Carolinas. Grand Rising, Patrick Gabriel. Hope all is well with you. He says we have a parish called Liberia Parish. Don't know if it's a connection or spelled the same. I'm sure there is some connection, Patrick. Alfred Jones says, I'm ready to go to the next level. If you're ready to go, we're ready to take you there. Most definitely. Doodle Vision. Is there anything that you want to share with us?
Well, greetings, gentlemen. Those that are also in the chat. All I wanted to say is waiting on these West Africans. And Equiano was from South Carolina. Look at his name. It's a Spanish name. Who ruled that territory at that time? They gave him a Spanish name and they shipped him over to Europe. Don't let the smooth taste fool you. Because here's the deal. He purchased his freedom. He won his freedom, right? Why did he remain in Britain? Why didn't he go back home to Africa when he became free? Not that far away. Just let's think about it for a little bit. Now I'll come back again, maybe tomorrow, or if someone decides to open up a chat that I'm not kicked out of, and I'll show evidence that Equiano was from South Carolina. I yield the mic.
Hold on, you can't be dropping nuggets and then just leaving. So you have evidence that Equiano was from South Carolina. Is that what you're saying?
Without a doubt. Equiano was Gullah.
I've heard some people
South
say
Carolina.
that. Okay, all right.
Oh, even
like
the people that's saying it, if you read, see, this is the thing, and I won't put it on no individual. Sometimes people get information and skim over. Even in any records that you'll find on Wikipedia or any other web thing, they'll tell you there's other sources saying that he's from South Carolina. If you just did a quick Google search on you, it'll tell you that there's other sources that's documenting that he's from South Carolina. The only reason they mention anything about Africa is because of his memoirs. And even parts on that, you can't actually say it's him saying where he's from, because you got to look at the years it was written. Like I said, dig deep into it. Just type his name in a quick Google search. You can hit the first thing on it. It's going to tell you other sources stating that he's from South Carolina.
So here's the question: who recorded his memoirs, and what was their background, and what was their agenda, and what were they trying to accomplish, and what was their field of study? Where did they graduate from? Where did they get their degree in? Were they Pan-Africans? I'm just asking.
And when we research, the key is vet the sources. Check the sources and check the source to that and the source to that.
So, again, we're not here to tell you who you are. We're not here to tell you who you're not. But we are here to ask the hard questions that most people are scared to ask because they don't want to offend people. The truth is the truth. Set it free, it stands on its own. So again, I'm not here to tell you that you're not part African. I'm here to help you do your genealogy. And if you find that you're a part African, congratulations. We'll help you find not only your tribe, but we'll help you find your house. Because they don't do houses. They don't do tribes in Africa. They do houses, just so you know. And then you'll find out what language you spoke. And then what you can really do then is determine if those DNA tests are actually accurate. Even though they read for entertainment purposes only. So, before we head on out, so we can let everybody get to work and do what they do and enjoy the rest of their day. Doodle Vision, is there anything that you want to share with the people before we go?
Yes, just wanted to say that a lot of these people, especially in the Carolinas, they try to make them part of Igbo, and they don't realize that it went from the Americas over to Europe and into Africa. If you study the Igbo, you study their religion, it is voodoo. Voodoo started over here in the Americas, originate in the Americas. How did voodoo get from the Americas to West Africa? How did it get from here to Nigeria specifically? Well, they're claiming that that gentleman is from Yield, this cotton picking Mike.
And just a little sprinkle on top of that, you never notice, voodoo is only where the French colonizers are at.
Don't sell out. But we head on out, get to work, and let these good people get to work as well in their communities and whatnot. Is there anything that you'd like to share?
Appreciate everybody for showing up today. What's the day? Thursday? Yeah. Have a great rest of your day. Links in the chat.
I want to thank everybody in the chat for the questions. Antonio, great questions, because at the end of the day, there are people who have been told that they, have African in their family. They shouldn't be ostracized. They shouldn't be made to feel that they don't have any descendants from here. All we're doing is just asking the question, because at one particular time, during the 90s and 2000s, everybody was from Africa, but no one was asking the question about the Indians. So all we're doing is just flipping the script from the standpoint of ask the questions. So the intention was never and is never to offend anybody with any African ancestry. That's not the question. That's not what we're here for. We're just merely asking for documentation of what's being stated about the slave trade. Because we know for a fact that it's been documented that a lot of the individuals that they're claiming are African are actually Indian, our ancestors. Again, I've done my genealogy back to the 1780s. There are no Africans in my family. There are no slaves in my family. My family comes from Caswell County on my father's side and Wayne County on my mother's side, both in North Carolina, tied to the Catawba Sioux, aka Issa, aka Sioux, from a French standpoint. Now, does that mean everybody in North Carolina and everybody in South Carolina are Indian? No. But we won't know who we are and where we're from until we do our genealogy. Let's get rid of the speculation. Let's find the facts. Again, Atante's Assembly is here to help those who want to do their genealogy and find out who their family are so they can tie back to their family, help their community, and help their tribe or their house become self-sufficient. With that, I want to thank everybody again and look forward till we meet again. Bones, take us out of here, bro.
Like you always say, we enjoy when we kick it with the relatives and the risings. Always interesting, always informative. And until the next Rising show, be blessed and peace.
Peace, y'all.